My name is Ryan Hibbert. I'm the training manager with Dynics. I've been with the company for 2 years, and boy, what a ride. I mean, I've been doing a lot of delivery and creation of the training classes that we offer. But late last year, Jeff came to me and said, hey, we really need to get some good documentation on Fusion. It's very important that we have not only good software, but good documentation to complement that. So the question is, well, what is the ingredients of good documentation? Well, the first thing is, and this was already mentioned, I mean, Chris and Jeff stole a lot of my thunder, but I'll try to focus on some of the things they may not have talked about in depth. So comprehensive, as they mentioned, we want to make sure that the Fusion, ICS360.Fusion, is actually detailed and complete, which has a very intuitive layout and good navigation. And as you've seen from some of the demonstrations, it does have that really clean layout. The next thing is it has to be accessible. So whether you're going to view this online or offline, you have to be able to access it. So online would be obviously a website that would host the documentation where you can navigate through it on a website. Offline could be you can download this as a PDF and view it offline on your computer. And then the last thing is it has to be current. We have to make sure that every change that we make to the software, whenever there's a software update, that we automatically have the documentation update along with it. And that's already been discussed. So let me show you a little bit more in depth on the documentation. It was introduced, but let's get into it a little bit more. So keep in mind, this is still a work in progress. There are some functionality here that we are going to be implementing very soon. But for now, the basics are, we have the selector here where you can select the different versions of the ICS Fusion that you've been, that you might have installed. So the latest is obviously going to show the latest. But if you have older versions of the Fusion software, you can actually select it from here. And then each time that we update this documentation, you'll see this update as well. And then over on the menu selection here, we have this collapsible tree that allows you to select each of the different areas of the software and click on it. So as an example, Jeff was talking a lot about the resources. So if I go over to the resources here, you guys reading this okay? You want me to zoom in a little bit?
Zoom would be good.
How's this? So on the resources, let's say I wanted to create a resource. Well, here's a step-by-step process for creating a new resource. Well, then it's like, well, wait a minute, what about all the different resources that I can select from? Well, here's a list of all of the resources organized by their type, the color palette, which is a series or as a trend. And we have a database, so if we're setting up a SQL database, Microsoft SQL or SQLite, and you just click on these. There's hyperlinks that allow you to go to each of these sections. And you'll see in all of these sections of the documents, there's hyperlinks that allow you to click. And some of these might even take you to a wiki page to give you more information about some specific technology. Again, like if you were looking at PLCs, I go back to my resource. We're looking at Rockwell PLC. We can click on that, and it shows all the stuff with configuring. And not only configuring it, if you wanted to do that styling, like Jeff was showing the ability to go in and configure the styling. I'm sorry, that's not on the resources, is it? It's on the widgets, sorry. So let's talk about that. So if I go to the widgets, like Jeff was talking about, where you add these to the dashboard. Again, there is a list here that has all of the widgets that you can navigate to quickly. And on here is where you can actually go in and set up the theme and the style for all the header information, the legend information, the way that the heat map will show for this example, that sort of thing. A couple of other things that we're still working on. Over on the right-hand side here, well, I don't have that fancy Skynet AI thing over here that Chris was showing, but I do have a couple of things we can search. Is that actually working? haven't even tried that yet. So if I type in PLC, it's going to show me all the search results for PLC. And I just click on it and it takes you right to it. There's also the ability to print, and it'll allow you to print to a printer or to a PDF if you have the PDF export capability. You can share. I'm not sure we have anything here on this yet, right? So if we wanted to share this with somebody, in the future we'll have this where you can share this document with somebody. And then the keywords here are another thing that we're working on. Right now it's just picking out the keywords, but in the future we'll be able to click on these to go to more information based on what's on this page. So this is really the direction that we're looking at moving with the documentation. And keep in mind, I want to emphasize that this is an integral part of the software releases. When we release software, we're going to automatically have it as our process to have this documentation updated along with it. Any questions? Yes, Chris?
Show reading mode, actually.
I'm sorry?
Show reading mode.
Reading web. Oh, yeah, this guy. So in the reading mode, we can get rid of all of the menus and everything and actually see this in a full screen reading mode. Thank you.
So when Ryan's talking about this integration to our build system, so we use MS DevOps, Microsoft DevOps for our development systems. So this actually becomes just like a piece of code in DevOps. And when we run a build or when Ryan makes changes or whomever might make changes to documentation, when they're done, they submit those changes through DevOps as a PR. That PR then has to be reviewed by the rest of the team for accuracy. And then when we build, that will be built into the documentation that's tagged by the version in DevOps. So it makes it very easy for us to make it convenient for you to get information relative to the specific version of Fusion or DCC or whichever product it is. And it also enforces a process on our part by which we must keep the documentation current, up to date with every minuscule feature change. So it's you know, documentation is always the thing that gets done last, it seems like, and we're trying to fix that with the way our process works so that documentation, as Ryan mentioned earlier, becomes a more integral part of the product development lifecycle.
And just like I was mentioning, and it was mentioned in previous presentations, context-sensitive means if I go to a certain flow operator, there'll be a help button that'll take you right to that appropriate documentation, or in different areas where it's strategically beneficial to have these help links. They'll be integral into the software itself. Any other questions?
Can the customer add notes to your documentation?
Are we going to have that capability? Customer can add their own notes? Not at this point, but that may be something we want to consider in the future. Any other questions? All right, thank you.